Good evening and welcome to this episode of In Harmony with Nature. I'm your host for this evening, Mike Shacklock. Joining me on this particular program, In Harmony with Nature, is somebody who's been with us a number of times before. It's Gilbert van Rijkenvorsall. He's an underwater photographer, and he always brings with us really interesting underwater videos that I love to watch. And specifically, the topic that we're trying to portray this evening is natural water, or the naturalness of water, I presume. Gilbert, can you expand on that at all?
The natural water is probably the whole idea of my photography. It's rendering the quality of water, which is so important to us. That's why I've been specializing in this direction. Natural water is natural when it supports the life that we know that it supports. We know the fish, we know the amphibians, we know the insect life, we know the plant life that exist around waters. Those are all indicators of the quality of water.
Mm-hmm. So the video that you brought along with you to show this evening then will help us to get into the waters, is it where, and look into it.
Well, we are starting with a condition that came up in June this year and worried many people because there was a great drought. Many weeks of drought, which caused the rivers to lose most of their water, and which created specific conditions which I found interesting to render, and you will see some of that, and we'll comment to that.
Oh, good, good. Well, perhaps we should start, should we? And see what's there.
Right.
All right, and if we could roll the video and have a look, and Gilbert will tell us what we're seeing and give us the insight and so on.
Here you are seeing schools of shad. Shad is an anadromous fish which runs every year in very large numbers our rivers. A smaller species is the Gaspereau, or river herring. Mm-hmm. But the shad is a fish, 3-4 pound fish. Sometimes people call it the poor man's salmon. This fish is an ocean fish that runs into the freshwater rivers of the Atlantic coast to spawn, and after the spawning returns to the saltwater again. This was the situation which was sort of halted because there wasn't enough water for the fish to return. And so in many rivers, and particularly in this case in the Shubenacadie River, where I am familiar with this particular site here, there were a number of holes, and each hole held hundreds, and some of them, I would say, thousands of fish were there and couldn't get out. And the water condition was deteriorating on them. The water was, the temperature of the water soon came up into the 80s.
Must have been very high, yeah.
It was balmy warm, you know, and that creates in the first instance, it takes out the oxygen of the water, which will be more of in the water as the temperature is lower, and as the temperature rises, it comes out. Also, all kinds of organisms which are very much in their growth, like algae, will start growing very profusely.
They consume a lot of oxygen too, don't they?
And they consume a lot of oxygen.
Yeah. Make it even worse.
Certain bacteria will do it too. And so the fish are becoming exposed to all these conditions, including ourselves, where these fish are becoming very easy to catch, and become an easy target for the young fishermen who normally wouldn't have a chance to catch fish of that size. And when I was there, I would have a number of little boys jigging the fish all around me. And
so they weren't staging anything for you. You were actually filming them or taking video of them doing
that's right.
what they do naturally when things were
yeah. And they were. This boy, he thought that the right thing to do was to take the hook out of the fish and then release him again. And that is a catch and release idea, but it's not exactly the way that particular thing is done, as it is done with by many fishermen these days that are catching the fish and then releasing them. They don't even get them out of the water. They just unhook the fish and they let them go again.
Well, these fish, as you mentioned, are very stressed because of the high temperature and type of water that they're in.
And that was, of course, a condition which was mortal to these fish. Most of the fish that were taken or jigged by these boys were probably in the next hour would be dead, or the wounds would become infected with bacteria and fungus, and you'll see at a certain moment the fish that are swimming around that are becoming susceptible to the bacteria,
which of course would work faster in warmer water. And
that's right.
Yeah,
that's right. And so as these fish were staying in those pools, it was only a matter of time, and the whole fish school would die off. And this is a very dramatic occurrence, and because it's something that has also for the future a connotation, because we are talking about this greenhouse effect, and the greenhouse effect is going to change very slowly but gradually the climate. There will be higher temperatures, and accordingly these conditions will occur more often, and so we'll have to become very careful with our rivers to keep the life that is there in it, because where this is probably a normal thing at the present time, I could easily foresee that in years to come we are going to look for that life, because it will tell us how natural that water is.
So adding stress to the situation that the fish are in is just going to make the species die faster, or the fish die faster? So we have to understand the other stresses that are being put on it, and perhaps we should reduce the stresses that we might ourselves put on the fish, because they're under enough problem as it is.
Very much so. And in this case, you see a fish that is in very bad condition. He is covered with fungi. There are infections on the fish. The fish is very weak, and actually what happened in the later stages of this drought period, I would go in there, and there would be a number of fish amongst the survivors. There would be always less fish, because you could see how many fish there had died in days before. But what happened was the anxiety that my entry caused made several fish die within the next few minutes. And
just your presence.
This is that would be an indication of how weak the fish really were. And in the end, they were just holding their mouth open continuously. They weren't making this movement anymore. And actually, what you are watching here is this fish getting into a terminal situation where he is close to death. He has lost his balance, and he's struggling to regain it, but he is too weak to succeed in that, and he is slowly sinking to the bottom. and he will expire there. And this is sort of a dramatic thing to watch when you are in that environment, but it is also probably the most dramatic visualization of what is happening in rivers under these conditions, you know.
Mm-hmm. So that's just about lost the fight there.
This one lost the fight. Something that I found kind of interesting. You in the previous shot you saw the outside shot. You saw all those dead fish flying around. I found it interesting that those fish in that condition always managed to get as far away from the live school as they could, probably in an attempt to not cause any disease by their expiration.
Would there be any consciousness perhaps in the school itself to move away from a dying fish?
I don't think there was that. It's just something that is in the instinct of the fish to get out of the way when the last breath is close, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like this one, for example. This is in the shore habitat in that river, which is and this fish has managed to get himself into there and died off, and but it's the fish were in a problem. But here we are coming now into the eutrophication of the river, the nutrients that are coming in, because this river is surrounded by agricultural lands, by habitations, and all the nutrients, the fertilizers, and then the detergents that we are putting into our wash, for example, are causing problems that make a tremendous algae bloom around and clog up the whole river with algae. And we are actually looking here at the opposite condition, which is the perfect condition of a river. Here you don't see any algae. You see a clean river bottom, and you see a trout that is feeding on a hatch of flies that are so prolific that he really isn't moving very far around. He just stayed close by to catch all the fish that were coming in that particular territory that fish had. Mm-hmm. And there were other fish doing the same thing in locations, and these fish have actually little territories there that's kind of interesting to watch. But this is beautiful clean water, lots of insects, and the life is there. And here we're coming into, this is a scene that I shot in the St. Mary's River in Guysborough County. You are looking into the small habitat of plants, and the watercolor there is a little different. It's though very clean water too, but it's affected by whatever the characteristics of the watershed of the river are like, whether there are marshes or lakes or
farmland or
farmland.
Sure.
It's all making the water of rivers very, very particular, and I'm looking at it from a photographer's point of view. I see a different color. You know, you can be there after a rain, and the waters are brownish, and then the sediment settles, and then it clears out again. And then you may have a situation where water from the lake is dominating in the river, and the water of a lake probably has more, is cleaner than the water from a flowing condition where that was caused by rainfall. And so here we are looking in this particular river at a very prolific natural flora, underwater plant life that is specific for water, and all kinds of species that live in our waters that are characteristic for our waters. Here we have shiners and creek chub and little perch that are attracted by food, some crushed mussels, freshwater mussels that were in the substrate there, and the scent. They were attracted by the scent, and also that attracts fish like the freshwater eel, where these little fish are residents. The eel is a fish which has a different life history. It lives its life in the river, but it spawns in the sea. It swims actually to the Sargasso Sea and spawns there, and then the little glass eels in the springtime are swimming along the ocean floor towards the North American coastline, and return to the rivers where they then spend their life, and when they become sexually mature, they will return to the ocean and spawn and die. You know, that's the opposite from the shad or the salmon, for example.
What was the eel doing at that point? Is it actually getting some grass, or was that?
It was eating. It was attracted by the scent of some freshwater mussels.
The mussels you mentioned
there that were open. Actually, I had opened them, and the scent of that attracts the fish. And if you want to see them, then that way you attract them to a position.
That's an interesting shot.
This is the visual phenomenon that you see in an underwater environment, looking out, where light is broken in a different way, incomparable to in air. You will get reflections of the bottom at below 45 degrees and above 45 degrees, which is your angle of vision. You're looking out, and so you have a bit of a window over you that is a circular hole that appears like that, and you can look out into air.
So that's what the trout would have been able to see, the flies and so on above the water.
Yeah. There is a great variety of life and plant life here. This particular plant is called sphagnum. It's a common plant that lives in colder water. And wherever you see sphagnum, in my experience, that indicates that there are fresh water, that there are springs. And springs are interesting phenomenon where groundwater is welling up into the river, and the groundwater is rather cold. And when you have a condition of overheating in the river, then that is the buffer that the river offers to the life that really depends on the temperature too. So all the fish are moving into these spring areas, and
I see. So, but the sphagnum, is that the thermocline or that
no,
area?
The sphagnum is a plant that lives in the cold spring areas.
Oh, I see.
And wherever you see it, it indicates that there is that the temperature of the water is cooler there. Where the other plants, when you get a drought, for example, then you get a fair amount of spring water coming in, and the spring water is colder and therefore denser, and it's heavier than the warmer water, and it forms a pool of cold water within the pool, within the pool, that is, so you have a warm water layer to the surface, and below that you have a pool of cold water, more than normal. And other plants that suddenly come into this cold groundwater die off, except the sphagnum.
Oh.
So here we have a snapping turtle, which is the largest of four species of four varieties of turtles that we have in Nova Scotia.
So he's scavenging there on a less fortunate member of the underwater community.
That's right. That's their role in the life cycle of species in the river. They are sort of omnivores. They eat whatever comes close to them. They have a tremendous scent. They can smell. This fish was a bait fish which I brought in.
Oh, I see.
But whenever a fish dies, the decomposition of the fish will create a scent that attracts the predators, which are a variety, and this would be one of the larger predators. The eels are another cleaner-upper. They just eat up whatever becomes available, like a dead fish, and thereby prevent disease from spreading in the river.
Mm-hmm. Looks like he's weighing up your possible impact that you might have on him.
Actually, it's very interesting. This particular turtle lives in Silver's Pool, which is one of the pools of the St. Mary's River. And I've known that same turtle over 10 years.
Really? Oh my.
Yeah. He's always there, and that's his territory. And when I photograph the salmon, for example, then I'm very busy with those fish. And at a certain moment, I look and I see something, and it's the turtle. He's watching me. Okay.
The watcher watched.
Yeah. Now here we are looking at a large accumulation of Atlantic salmon, which I filmed in a river in the Gaspé, but which could be in any of the well-known salmon rivers that we also have in Nova Scotia. And it's the largest fish that we have in any numbers in our rivers. And people are used to seeing the salmon because he jumps. He's just a big fish that is easily identifiable as a salmon. And I think that therefore it's an indicator that that is important for the general public, because if you didn't know that there are that in fact all these species are indicators, but you have to have one that is most visible. And from the photographic point of view, I want to render the quality of the water by the life that is supported by it. So if you have a salmon, a large fish, then that is a prominent indicator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Everyone can identify with that.
So this is this would be a location where air and oxygen is getting into the water. It's in these ripples and waterfalls and conditions that bring the air into water, because all the life that exists down there also breathes and lives off the oxygen that we are getting out of air, but other species in the aquatic environment getting out of the water.
Mm-hmm.
And we're looking at this splendid clear water. There are not too many places in the world where you can see comparably as clean water and clear as we have it over here.
It looks a lot better than the water and environment that you had at the beginning of the tape. It's much more vibrant and vital here.
Yes, yes. It is more. It is mountain. It's a mountain stream. There are no plant colors that are affecting this water, which would be completely normal. But from the visual impact, this very clear water has that advantage.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, these rivers where you have water that is that clear the nutrients that are in those rivers are a smaller world of species, because the river is often too fast for much animal life to exist in that kind of a fast-moving water column. And so you will find in a river like that salmon or salmonid fish, trout, some of the whitefish you can see there. Mm-hmm. Salmonid fish that live in water that is in motion, that brings the food to them, that has a high degree of oxygen, but not that many nutrients. And particularly those rivers are becoming more prominent when you're going into northern waters, and it's the salmon and the trout that are the indicators of the quality of that water. Another thing that you see in this picture is the fascinating erosion phenomena that are caused by the power of water and the turbulence of rock that has created whirlpools that are drilling into the bedrock. Mm-hmm. And have left paths of erosion that are really interesting to see.
They wouldn't leave much in the way of a place for fish to live or to hide or get any protection.
Well, it's the geography of the river that is also a condition that the particular fish strains have become used to, and particular species have become used to, that are able to live in that kind of environment, you see. But from the visual point of view, for us, where the underwater world is not as accessible, it is interesting to see the photographic angles. Mm-hmm. that you look at as a photographer with the intention to show the public what that environment down there looks like, mm-hmm. how big it is, what the life is, how you move in that environment as a man, mm-hmm. Versus the fish. You have to have all these ideas as a perception that gives you a feeling of what that is.
So what you've been able to do then is to give us a benefit of your insight and your perspective, your point of view under the water.
Exactly.
To show us the effects that we are making on the water. So it's a rather unique thing for us to see. That brings us to the end of our program. Thank you very much for being with me this evening and bringing that video along with you. It was very enlightening to me. My guest this evening has been Gilbert van Rijkervostal, and he's talked to us about natural water. Thanks for joining us on In Harmony with Nature. Good night.